Okay, so this popped up in my mind, and I'm like, I need to do it before I forget. Okay, so see, I was going back and forth with myself. I just watched this video about how they're flying drones over Central America, and they're finding all these cities that are like lost in the rainforest down there. Okay, I mean, they say they're lost, but I mean, in my mind, I'm always like the Catholic Church knows, and it's the Catholic Church is who always comes to mind because the buck stops there, in my opinion. I mean, that's just how I understand things. But I'm like, the Catholic Church knows they were there. They gave the orders, they gave the decrees to these certain nations: go here and go conquer these places, dumb diverses. So which that I mean has got me into another thing because I've been looking into the Crusades too. I'm like, because I remember, I'm like, I remember like watching Robin Hood, and they kept saying King Richard was off on the Crusades in the Holy Land, and I don't know why, but now it's been like bothering me. Where did he actually go for these Crusades? I mean, we know the why. They were trying to tear down Jerusalem, or what we've been taught to call Jerusalem. They were tearing it down. But this was during the king. This is during the 1100s. They're saying they did this. That is strange. So, but I'm not. That's not what this is about. This was about just something was telling me to start looking into this, and I'm like, I'm gonna do this before I forget. So, yeah. So they're talking about they're flying drones over Central America. They're finding all these places that are buried away in the jungles, and now they want to start exploring. Like Nicaragua is one that's always caught my attention because the name phonetically sounds like it's important or interesting, right? And like you have these universities from Canada that are going down there and they're digging open these mounds down there because they claim they found like 300 new mounds. How did you just find them? You're telling me like the native population or just the local population didn't know anything about it? Like how are you the ones discovering it? And it's like 2023, 2024, so in the Gregorian calendar. So I find that all to be odd that like let's bring this stuff up now. Here it is. Phew. It's kind of like when they just said they found like 3,000 new islands around Japan. Why all of a sudden now are you bringing that up? Why now? You could have done it any other time, but you're doing this all around the same time. Why? So, watching it, my mind's going back and forth to that book. What's it called? Mexico is Egypt. It's like the one where I know I posted some of it, but after a while it just got really long listening to the computer read. But yeah, I know I had posted the part though, and I think it was in part 2 that I posted, where it said, or it was no, it was the last chapter I had posted, because that's where I wanted to make a point of it. They said that the builders that from what these 3 Englishmen could gather, they felt the builders of what's down there in Central and South America were the same ones that built Angkor Wat, right? And they said the ones who built this, they left designs on both of their buildings in Central America and over there in at Angkor Wat, and it's like the similarities. They said they had to be described as being the work of the Javans. And my mind, so I'm going over this video about these buildings being discovered and stuff like that, and I'm like, who really is Javan? Because at first I'm like, I know he's not Shem. But I'm like, is he Cham or was he Japhet? So I went and looked for it, and now that's kind of weird because as I'm reading this, it seems as if they're trying to make Javan fit the Greeks, and I don't know why. I can't explain it because, like I said, I'm just not getting into it. And I'm like, let's look at this. But Javan, I don't know if he really is Greek. Like, it seems like they're trying to make him fit. a narrative. They're just doing it off of like what, two letter placements in his name. So here we go.
Javan, Hebrew Javan.
Oh, sorry about the volume. I didn't know it was down that low.
Javan, Hebrew Javan. Iota, of foreign origin, the name of a person, borrowed from that of his descendants, and also of a city. 1. The fourth son of Japheth, and the father of Elisha, Tarshish. Kittim, and Dodanim, GE 10 to 2, 4, 1 CH 1 to 5, 7. BC Post 2514. Hence for the country settled by his posterity, supposed to be Greece, i.e. Ionia, whence the Heb. Name, which province, settled by colonists from the mother country, was better known to the Orientals, as lying closer to them, than Hellas itself, see Gesenius, these. Heb, page 587.
So right off the bat, I thought it was interesting that we have a name that we're familiar with, Tarshish, because of the prophecy that the people will be brought back on the ships of Tarshish, that are in certain areas. And, Javan is still used in today's economy. And I'll see if I can pull that up later on. I believe it's the name of an icon for, cell phones or computers or something like that. It's a search engine and things like that. But I was like, it's still here. But it made me think when they were talking about the ships of Tarshish and nobody can find the ships of Tarshish, is it the ships of Javan? Just curious. And the other part there, the part where it talks about down here, settling in the mother country. That reminds me of stuff that the Moors talk about, right? When they talked about, and I don't agree with them on this, but I pointed it out when I first came across it, that they said this because I thought, transparency. But they were trying to say, the Mayans are Greeks. Look at the dress. Look how they wear leopard skins. Look how, look at their designs and pottery. And, this is the Greeks. And they brought up the Asias, right? They were like, you have Asia Major and Asia Minor. And then they pointed to the star on the California flag. And they're like, why did California choose a bear for their icon? And people were, giving their answers. And they're like, well, there's no bears in California. And if there is, there's not that many. It's like, so why did they do that? It had to do with Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. And they were saying one is the motherland and the other, is the child, right? And they were saying, we always hear about Asia, Asia, Asia. We'll never hear about Asia Minor. And it's because we're living in Asia Minor, and that over there is Asia Major. And the way you could tell where we're living in Asia Minor is because we have the wandering star, the star of the north over here, and they don't. So that popped into mind when I seen that right there from the Orientals. So let's move on.
It is mentioned among the places where the Syrians obtained articles of traffic, comp. Bochart, Phaleg, 3, namely, brass and slaves, Es 27 to 13. As a distant country among the isles of the sea, Isaiah chapter 66 verse 19. Alexander the Great is styled king of Javan. Greeka, Dar 821, Dar 1020, Dar 11 to 2, ZEC 913. In Jo 3 to 6. The patronymic occurs Nu Eahari Nu is, sons of, the Grecians, like the poetic Yes Achaean. See ethnology. This name, or its analogue, is found as a designation of Greece not only in all the Shemitic dialects, but also in the Sanskrit, the Old Persic, and the Egyptian, noble. Volkertofel, page 78 square. And the form Ia1s appears in Homer as the designation of the early inhabitants of Attica, Iliad, 13, 685. While Aeschylus and Aristophanes make their Persian interlocutors call the Greeks Ia1s, Aeschylus, Pers. 174, 055, 911, etc. Aristof. 104, 106. And the scholiast on the latter of these passages says, Echelon. The occurrence of the name in the cuneiform inscriptions of the time of Sargon, about BC 709, in the form of Yavnan or Yunan, as descriptive of the Isle of Cyprus, where the Assyrians first came in contact with the power of the Greeks, further shows that its use was not confined to the Hebrews, but was widely spread throughout the East. The name was probably introduced into Asia by the Phoenicians, to whom the Ionians were naturally better known than any other of the Hellenic races on account of their commercial activity and the high prosperity of their towns on the western coast of Asia Minor. The extension of the name westward to the general body of the Greeks, as they became known to the Hebrews through the Phoenicians, was but a natural process, analogous to that which we have already had to notice in the case of Chittim. It can hardly be imagined that the early Hebrews themselves had any actual acquaintance with the Greeks. It is, however, worth mentioning, as illustrative of the communication which existed between the Greeks and the East, that, amongst the artists who contributed to the ornamentation of Esarhaddon's palaces, the names of several Greek artists appear in one of the inscriptions, Rawlinson's Herod 1483.
There it is. So they're trying to say, these people of Javan are the Greeks, and case closed. But like I said in that book, they didn't say, oh, the architects, the designs of Mexico and Angkor Wat, oh, these are Greek. No, they said these are the people of Javan. So that's why I'm like, all right, they're trying to make Javan, they're disguising who Javan really is. All right, and they have no. So it's almost like, okay, if you're saying if these people of Javan are the Ionians and the Ionians are the Greeks, then who are then you're taking the Greeks out of who they really were, their real bloodline, and you're hiding them in somebody else. So you make the people of Javan fit this description, so you can hide who the Greek real bloodline runs back to. See what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like, all right, it's almost like a vacuum, right? They say, there's a power vacuum. When one force is taken away, someone else is drawn to take its place. Okay? So it's like we're taking away the real Greeks and we're hiding who they are, and in their place we're going to substitute the people of Javan. And so you'll take that example and say, okay, this sounds good enough. You've repeated it long enough. This makes sense. And that's where I'm like, no. Because these three English dudes that wrote that, they would have said, well, this is Greek. This is Greek architects. This is Greek designs. The Mayan stuff, all this stuff, this is Greek. And then that's not what they said. They said the builders of these, they said that in their opinion, the common denominator was the same ones that built the stuff in Mexico, in Central America, were the same ones who built the stuff in Angkor Wat, and their common artwork was that of the people of Javan. And so there it was. I just had to think about it out loud long enough, and it was going to clear itself up.
The Hebrews must have gained considerable knowledge of the Greeks through the Egyptians. Psammetichus, BC 6.64 to 610, employed Ionians and Carians as mercenaries, and showed him so much favor that the war caste of Egypt forsook him in a body. The Greeks were settled near Bubastis, in a part of the country with which the Jews were familiar. Herod 2, 154. The same policy was followed by the succeeding monarchs, especially Amasis, BC 571 to 525, who gave the Greeks Naucratis as a commercial emporium. It is tolerably certain that any information which the Hebrews acquired in relation to the Greeks must have been through the indirect means to which we have adverted. The Greeks themselves were very slightly acquainted with the southern coast of Syria until the invasion of Alexander the Great. The earliest notices of Palestine occur in the works of Hecataeus, BC 594 to 486, who mentions only the two towns Canatus and Carditz. The next are in Herodotus, who describes the country. Who describes the country as Syria Palestina, and notices incidentally the towns Ascalon, Azotus, Ecbatana, Betania, and Caditis, the same as the Canatus of Hecataeus, probably Gaza. These towns were on the border of Egypt, with the exception of the uncertain Ecbatana, and it is therefore highly probable that no Greek had, down to this late period, traveled through Palestine, see Greece. 2. Sept. Enos versus R. Ionan, Euan, a region or town of Arabia Felix, whence the Syrians procured manufactures of iron, cassia, and calamus, Hes 27 to 19. Probably the Javan mentioned in the Camus, pages 18-17, has a town of Yemen, and a port of Ispahan. Some confound this with the preceding name, Credna and Hitzig, on Joel chapter 3 verse 6, see Meyer on Joel, p. 166, but Tuck, on Genesis page 210, suggests that it may have been so named as having been founded by a colony of Greeks. By a change of reading, see Havanic. Adlock. In an associated word, mu al zeta lambda, from uzal, for mal zeta lambda, spun, i.e. thread. Some critics have thought they find another place mentioned in the same vicinity, see Bochart, Phaleg, 2, 21. Bibble. 3 to 296-305. Javelin is the rendering in the Orth. Verse. Of Tuheb. Terms. Newite, Chaneth, so called from its flexibility. A lance. 1 SA 1810-11. 1 SA 19 to 9-10. 1 SA 2033. Elsewhere, spear. And Romach, from its piercing, a lance for heavy armed troops, New 25 to 7, lancet, i.e. spearhead, 1 Key 1828, buckleder, incorrectly, 1 Ch 12 to 8, elsewhere, spear. See armor. Name of sons of Javan, brothers to Elisha, Tarshish, and the Kittim, in the ethnographic table in Genesis, x. 4. The ancestor being Javan, equals Ionian, the Dodanim must represent also a Greek clan. This cannot be Dodona in the interior of Epirus, as both the association with the Kittim, equals Cyprians, and General x. 5 indicate a people settled on the seashore. Dardanians, the northern Ionians, have been suggested, but it is not likely that the author of this list had such detailed knowledge of the subdivisions of the Greek population. In Ikron, I-7 the reading is, Rodanim, as it is in the Samaritan, the Septuagint, and Jerome. In general x-4 these are the inhabitants of the island Rhodes. Well known to the Phoenicians of old, compare Homer's Iliad, II. 654. The only difficulty in the way of this identification is the long o in the Hebrew, where the Greek has the short sound. The modern commentators, Banch and Holzinger, accordingly changed the Ra, D, into a Ra, R, and read, Rodanum. Name of one of the 7 sons of Japheth, given in the list of nations, General X, 2, 4, Comp. Ikron, I, 5, 7, and as such the progenitor of Elisha, Tarshish, the Hittim, and the Dodanim, Rodanim. The word corresponds to the Greek ion, the plural of which is ionas, with the digamma between the R and O, see Homer's, Iliad, Shii. 685. The Greek name denotes the Ionians, settled. When the list of Genesis was written, on the mainland of Greece and on the islands of the Aegean Sea as well as along the coast of Asia Minor. The Greeks were designated by this name in Assyrian, Yahwa Nu, Greece, Yornai, Greek, Schrader, Kat. 2d ed. pp. 87 et sec, and in Old Persian. And the name was used in this sense by the Syrians, the Arabs, and the Egyptians. The question is still open whether in the Old Testament, Javan connotes the Greeks. In keeping with this usage of other ancient peoples, or merely the Ionians proper. According to Stade, De Populo Javan, Gießen, 1880. The term stands for the Ionians of Asia Minor in all pre-Persian passages of the Old Testament, e.g., Ezek. XXVII. 13. Isa. LXVI. 19, and therefore also in General X. It has the wider significance in Joel III. 6. Persian Age, Zek. X. 13, and Dan. 7, 21. In these passages the context shows merely that a distant country is meant, Isa. LXVI. 19, into which Israelites were sold as slaves, by the Phoenicians and Philistines, Joel II. 6. Something of this kind is certainly also referred to in Zek. X. 13. In fact Ezekiel, XXVII. 13, speaks of Ionian, or Greek, slave trading in the market's attire. In Ezek, XXVII. 19 the word, Javan, is either a corruption of the text, in view of the circumstance that in verse 13 it is used in a clearly different meaning from that required here. See Cornell, Ezekiel, pp. 351 et sec. Or it designates an Arabic people. Glazer, Skize der Gesh. UND Geography Arabians, II. 428, suggests that in this verse it is the name of the place called Jain, not very far from Medina. In Talmudic literature, Javan stands unquestionably for Greece, e.g., in Yoma 10a. Lashon Yuanit means the Greek language. In late Hebrew, Javan denotes the Russians, because they belong to the Greek Catholic Church. Therefore Nathan Nate Hanover calls his description of the Shmielniki persecution, Yuan Mezula, punning on peas. LXIX. 3. In Yiddish literature and in the parlance of the Russian Jews, Javan, pronounced Yovan, denotes the soldier. So Perez in his sketch, Der Meshalah. Bay Yovan is a gut cheddar, equals, military service is a good training.